I heard somewhere from another author that if you are not sick of your manuscript by the time you're ready for printing, then you're doing something wrong. Hey everybody, welcome back. Today I want to touch on something that absolutely fascinates me, and that is the editing process. It's essentially how I get from a first draft of a book to a fully finished manuscript that is fully ready for print and formatting. Now, if you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know how fascinated I am with the editing process and the way different writers and authors go about perfecting their work and getting from an initial draft to a finished product. And I thought, what better way to go about this than to go over my process from start to finish, right? Great, so are you ready to hop in? Here we go. Okay, so first up in my process is the writing, the drafting. I will write, and I write, and I write, and I write some more, and it seems like it's never gonna end, and I keep writing. I just need to get that first draft out. I am the kind of person who really loves to plot. I am a plotter, so I spend a lot of time in the beginning making sure that my story hits all of those major points that I want to go over, and that it makes a nice, satisfying narrative arc. You are in luck because I do have a video where I go over my entire plot work process, which I will hot link here and also put in the description below, so you can watch that if you are interested. But since I spend so much time working on plot ahead of time, that means I'm not super concerned in the drafting phase about making sure everything fits from like a building block standpoint. This is one of the reasons that I love plotting before I even get started on a draft, because I feel really confident when I am kind of spitting out words and trying to get those word counts straight off the bat. I don't feel like I'm lost when I'm in the middle of it. It might be hard to get through certain points, but I never feel like I don't know where I'm going. Something important to note is that I actually don't let anyone read my first draft. I know a lot of people will work on drafts and send them off to beta readers or writing buddies, but I really don't like anyone to even look at it until I'm done with the initial full manuscript from start to finish in the drafting phase. Call me a little superstitious or a perfectionist, but I really believe that my first draft is one that is for my eyes only. So I don't let anyone else read it. I'm the only one who's allowed in that messy mess. Then once I have everything down, it's finally time to start on the editing. I don't really enjoy the drafting phase, honestly. It's kind of just gurgitating out whatever I can get out onto the page, and the real work kind of begins once I get to start on the editing. But it is important to note that I do let my manuscript sit for a couple days, maybe even an entire week after I finish my first draft. I want it to be kind of fresh once I go back in and start my rereading, which leads me to the first phase of editing. I will fully export my manuscript from Scrivener. I will export it to a PDF. I'll send it off to my Kindle email address, and I will read it on my Kindle in that initial draft phase as though I am a reader myself. And I do kind of something interesting here. I don't make these edits and notes anywhere digitally. I will read on my Kindle, and then I have a notebook that I will keep by my side while I'm reading, and I'll make notes and mark where it's happening. Things like major developmental edits. That would be things like plot issues that need filling, plot holes that need patching up, if I have weird character names, or maybe I've had some placeholders that I need to fill in, if I feel like some things are slow or I need to pull out scenes entirely. This is where I'll make those notes, and I don't worry about editing at all at this point. This is literally just me reading it as a reader and trying to see the grand scheme of things and those major plot and developmental edits that I want to get into. Next phase, I will actually hop into implementing these developmental edits. So once I've finished the full read through, I've got all my notes, I pull Scrivener back open, and I will start implementing everything that I have marked that needs adjustments, where I'm taking out scenes, putting in scenes, writing entirely new chapters, anything like that. That's what happens. And I go through and kind of, fill in those areas that feel like they need patching so that I have the building blocks for when I actually want to start refining. Once that round of edits is done, I will take it to the next phase, which is really where I get to start sculpting. So I've done all this work building the base of the story and making sure it's really substantial and hits all of the major plot points that I want it to. And I get to kind of file it down and start to really fine tune the edges, right? So this is where I will go through on Scrivener and read scene by scene, line by line. I will do line edits, I'll do copy edits. I'll really kind of like make it shine and try and really sand everything down and get it really smooth and ready for polishing. And unfortunately, although the previous phase I get to do on my Kindle in a cozy chair or whatever, I do have to do this within Scrivener because I'm making edits as I go. This is probably one of the longest phases of editing for me because it's where a lot of heavy lifting happens. It's me having to read very closely and make edits as I go along and change sentences and make things more beautiful and really kind of refine it all. Whew, are you tired yet? Because I feel like I'm tired just talking about this. It's triggering me because this is so much work. But you know what? It's worth it. In the end, it's worth it. It's worth it. All right, next up, this is the phase where I finally feel like it is ready for other people to look at it. I am ready to have other eyes on the manuscript at this point because I don't just have like kind of a lump of ideas on the page. I actually have some structure, I've got some movement going, I've got some action moving it forward, and I've got a little bit of refinement. So this is where I pull in my beta readers. I have a trusted group of really close friends and family and other authors that will read the book at this point and give me notes kind of on like a larger scale. I do export at this point for whatever my beta reader prefers. Usually that's sending straight to their Kindle. This is kind of just a general critique, honestly. I'm looking for major advice on slow points, maybe character development, anything that sticks out to them as a reader. I did initially start with a critique sheet, like a list of questions and kind of advice for what I'm looking for. But now that I have a team that I trust, they kind of already know what I'm looking for. But if you're just starting out with beta readers, it can be a good idea to give them guidelines on the information that you want to get from them on this read through. I do accept comments on grammar edits and things like that if something sticks out to them, but I let them know that at this point the book is very rough and it hasn't even been to a professional editor yet, so to just, take it at face value. And it is worth mentioning that I do budget out 4 weeks for this phase at the very least, because a lot of people have their own lives and they've got their own stuff going on, and I need to acknowledge the fact that they can't drop everything and read my book within a 24-hour period. This can also be why it is super helpful to have other author friends that you exchange work with. I know that has been super helpful to me because we're all on the same page and this is all our job. So we put it at the top of our list to get done. Unlike friends and family who you do have to make allowances for because they can't just drop everything and do a complex read through of your story. I also will make sure to ask that they give me feedback as they are reading. That way I can decide if I'm going to make changes based on their feedback in the moment. It really helps me stay on top of things so that I don't get stuck in a timeline that's going to drag out forever. But a lesson hard learned for me is that I really do need to trust my own taste, especially with my beta readers. They're going to have a lot of comments and suggestions. A lot of feelings come through at this point. So I really need to know exactly what I'm trying to do with my work and how to accept critiques, implement changes that I vibe with, and maybe discard ones that I feel like don't resonate with me. All right, so next up is the big editing. This is where it goes to my professional editor and she does her magic on it. I spent so much time looking for an amazing editor, and it is worth it to find someone that you trust and that you feel like makes your work better. I did so much research just searching for someone that I felt like would fit with me and what I needed. And my editor does a combination of developmental, line, and copy editing. It's kind of like a mishmash of all three, which is absolutely perfect for my needs and where my manuscript is once I get to this stage. So in order to work with her, I will at this point export from Scrivener into Microsoft Word, which is the industry standard for editing and getting markup back on your manuscript. It is at this point where I leave Scrivener and I don't go back to it because all of my stages from this point out happen within Word. So my editor will take the manuscript, go through it entirely, go in Microsoft Word and do track changes and make her markups and comments, etc. And I do budget out around 4 weeks for this. It does take a bit of time in order to go through this close of an editing process. And when she's done, it comes straight back to me, and I have the joy of going through and accepting or rejecting any suggested changes that she has provided. It is important to note that I don't have to do everything she says. It's all within track changes and Word, so I have the ability to reject anything that I don't agree with. Most of the time, I am going to agree with her because I'm paying her good money to tell me what is best for the book itself. But there are some instances where I will stick to my guns and I just do what I want to do. But that's not the only part of this process. My editor will send a full page of suggested edits that aren't directly in the line comments that she makes. These are things like word repetitions or phrases that I'm using a lot. And I will go through the entire manuscript and find all instances of these phrases or whatever, and I will replace them and fix all instances of that. I actually don't use track changes when I'm doing that because it's something that she doesn't necessarily have to be aware of, but everything else I will do within track changes because you guessed it, it goes back to her again, and she will finalize the document, accept any changes, clean it all up, and send it back to me ready to go. But if you think that that is the end of the process, you would be wrong because I still have to go through a copy editor, which is my next phase. I use someone who is not my main developmental editor. I need different eyes on it at this point, which I highly suggest. The more eyes you can get on the manuscript, the more errors and mistakes that you're likely to catch. But thankfully, this is the final phase of the editing, and my copy editor is the one who's going to catch any last little bits, any lingering details. She's really doing the final wax and polish on the manuscript. Now that I've refined all the edges and made all the details shine, she really gets in there and buffs everything out so it is absolutely perfect and ready to go. And again, this phase is also within Word using track changes. Like I said, I don't go back to Scrivener once we start getting to the professional editing phase. So once it comes back from my copy editor, you guessed it, I get to do another round of edits, guys. I have to go through the whole thing and accept or reject changes again. I usually take this opportunity to do a final pass on the manuscript as a whole, and I catch any lingering bits that I have missed, and of course, anything that my copy editor has marked and flagged for edits. I heard somewhere from another author that if you are not sick of your manuscript by the time you're ready for printing, then you're doing something wrong. And I have totally found that to be true. At this time in the process, I am totally disgusted by the work entirely, and I never want to look at another chapter again. But this is the nature of the beast, and this is how you go about getting from a draft to a fully published book. But then at this point, you're pretty much done. I mean, besides the formatting, which is an entirely other video, honestly, there is a whole process that goes into making sure you get from Word to a fully finished product ready for print. But we don't have enough time to go into that today. Maybe I'll do it another time. Anyone who tells you writing the book is the hard part, I don't know if I would agree with that. Writing a first draft is literally the first steps in a very long and drawn out process. Getting a book to publication ready status takes so much perseverance and hard work to push through, and I always have to remind myself of this every time I go through it. Honestly, it never gets easier. I think I just get used to the amount of energy that it takes to get over these hurdles and to push through the pain. Because in the end, it's worth it. And I know that in the end, I will have a beautifully crafted manuscript that I'm super proud of. So I hope you enjoyed this little journey into my editing process. It is important to realize that everybody has their own methods and their preferred ways to go about doing this. I take a lot of inspiration from other people, and I'm always learning and adapting and trying new things, because that's how you're always going to stay on top of your game and grow as an author, is if you're open to trying new things. That being said, if you have a way that you go about editing that is different from mine, please let me know in the comments below, because I am always collecting information and adjusting and trying to make my craft stronger. And I think that we do that by sharing these ideas and our process. If you found this video helpful and you want to do me a solid, hit that like and subscribe button so you can stay up to date on everything new that I am putting out. I am so glad that you chose to join me for today. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!